Hello and welcome to this demo. In this demo, we're going to look at replica sets. In my project folder, I'm now going to create a new folder called replica set. And under that, I will now create a new definition file for my replica set. And I will name it as replicaset-definition.yaml. In this file, I'm now going to create my file structure. So I will start with the API version. So now, if you're not sure about the file structure or the contents of a particular definition file, you may refer to the Kubernetes documentation site at kubernetes.io/docs. Under this, if you select the documentation section for a particular object, you will see examples and you will be able to pick up some templates from there. Now, as I see, it's apps/a1, that's the API version. And when I try to input the kind, it automatically gives me a list of objects available under the API version. And so I select replica set from the drop-down list. I now populate metadata. Under metadata, I'm going to set the name for my replica set as my app-replica set. And I will also add some labels to my replica set. The next is the spec section, which is the most crucial part of this definition file. Under spec, as you can see, I have template, so I will select template. Now, under template, I have spec and metadata. As you can see, it is referring to the spec of the pod, which is what is shown here as v1.pod spec. Under spec of the replica set, I can also have replicas. And then if I hit Control Space, it also lists me selectors. So I'm going to select that as well. Now, if I remove one of it, as you can see, there's a warning shown against spec. So this is the Kubernetes plugin for PyCharm that's giving me this warning. And it says that I am missing a required properties on the replica set spec. Now this is great because while I'm developing Kubernetes definition files, it would be nice if it gave me these kind of warnings where I am told if there is something that I'm missing or something out of place. So in this case, it tells me that the selector is a required property for replica set, as we discussed during the lecture, and so it picks that out. So I'm now going to add the selector back in. Okay, now under the template section, we could copy the contents of the pod definition file. I now have the pod definition file open on the right side. So now I'm going to copy the contents of it, except for the first two lines, which are the API version and kind, and I will place it under template. Now remember, I've added a tab after template because template is an object, and I'm now going to paste the contents that I copied under template. However, as soon as I do that, as you can see, there are a number of warnings and error messages shown. This is because when I copied the section from my pod definition file, all of the properties were at the root level of that file. And so when I pasted it here, some of these lines are not intended properly. The easy way to do it, instead of doing it line by line, which may lead to further confusion, the easier way to do it is to select all of those lines that I pasted, except for the first line, and hit the tab key twice. And that will move all of the selected lines to the right twice. And that way, putting the lines under the template section as required. Now, as you can see, all the warnings and error messages have disappeared. The metadata section falls under template, and the spec section for the pod also falls under template. I will now update the number of replicas to 3. And finally, under selector, as you can see, there are two options available, match expressions and match labels. So I'm going to select match labels. And then I'm going to copy the labels from the pod definition and paste it under the match labels section. The selector is used to link the replica set with the pods. Okay, so now that I have the file completed, I'm going to copy the contents of the file. Before using it, I'm actually going to run a lint checker on it. So I will use the YAML lint website to check it, and it looks good. So the structure of the file looks good. So I'm going to copy it now. I'm now going to create the replicaset definition.yaml file on my Kubernetes master node, and I will place the contents that I copied from my IDE. I will now verify the contents of the file. Okay, and that looks good. I will now create the replica set using the kube control create-f replicaset definition.yaml file. Okay, there you go, and as you can see, the replica set has been created. I will now run the command kube control get replica set to see the list of replica sets. In this case, I have a single replica set, and as you can see, the number of pods under it. The desired number is 3, the current number is 3, and the pods that are ready is 1. I will now run it again a few times. When I run the kube control describe command, I can see additional information about my replica set. I can see the name of it, the selector, the labels assigned to it, and I can also see the pod template and the image used by the pod. In the events, you can see the list of different pods that were created as part of this replica set. When I run the kube control get pods command, I can now see that there are 3 pods created and they're in a running state. They all have the name of the replica set prefixed to their names, and then there's a unique ID that separates the name of these pods. Okay, now to test my replica set, what I'm going to do is I'm now going to delete one of the pod, because as we discussed in the lecture, the replica set is supposed to monitor the pods, and if any of them goes down, it's supposed to bring them back automatically to meet the number of replicas that we specified in the definition file. Now, to test if the replica set is working properly, I'm going to delete one of the pod that I created, that was created under the replica set. And as you can see, when I now run the get pods command, you can see that one of the pods is terminating, which is the pod that I tried to delete. At the same time, it's created another pod which is in a container creating state. So one is in a terminating state and another is in a creating state. And in a few seconds, the one that I deleted is completely gone, and there's a new one which is now in a running state. So the replica set has automatically brought up a new pod when it detected that one of the replicas is missing. Okay, let's try something else now. I'm going to go into the pod definition file that we created earlier, and I'm now going to create an additional pod. So as we know, a replica set monitors the number of pods and makes sure that the number of that it maintains the number of pods that we specified. When we deleted one, it automatically created a new one. But what happens when you try to create a new pod outside of the replica set? In this case, I'm just going to create a new pod directly. And as you can see, it's already in a terminating state, which means as soon as we created the pod, replica set noticed it and it deleted that or terminated that pod immediately, because it will not allow you to create new pods with the same labels. Now remember that this is only effective to the pods that are with the same labels that the replica set filter is set to. If you create a new pod with a different label, then that is going to continue to run, and it's not going to be under the radar of the replica set. When I run the kube control describe replica set command, and when I look at the events, I can now see that the additional events created when a new container was created, and you can see the additional event created when a container was deleted when I tried to add a pod manually. Okay, now if I run the kube control get pods command with a -o wide option, I can see 2 additional fields, IP and node. I can now see the distribution of my pods on the two different nodes. There are 2 pods running on node 1 and 1 running on node 2. I'm now going to make a change to my replica set. I'm going to update the number of replicas to 6 because I want to scale the number of pods. I will now go to my replica set definition file and update the replica set definition file with my new definition. Okay, now I'm going to run the kube control replace command to update my replica set, and I will provide the replica set definition file as the input. When I now run the kube control get replica set command, I can now see that the number of desired replicas is 6, and the number of current replicas is 6, and the number of them that are ready is 3. If I run the describe replica set command to see additional information under events, I can now see that 3 new replicas was created. If I now run the kube control get pods command, I should be able to see all the replicas. However, there is one still under creation. When I now run it again, I see that it's in a running state. If I now run the kube control get pods command with a wide option, I can now see that all the pods are distributed equally across the 2 nodes. There are 3 on node 1 and 3 on node 2. I can achieve the same by running the kube control scale command, and now I'm going to scale down my replica set by using the kube control scale command and with an option replicas equals 3. When I now run the kube control get replica set command, I can see that the desired number of replicas is 3, and when I run the kube control get pods command, I see that only 3 replicas are running. However, if you look at the replica set definition file, it still has the number of replicas set to 6. So remember that even if you use the file as input for the scale command, it doesn't automatically update the number of replicas inside the file. So watch out for that. I'm now going to delete my replica set by running the kube control delete replica set command. And as you can see, the replica set is deleted. If I run the kube control get all command to list all of the objects in my cluster, I see that there's one still pending and it should be gone anytime now. When I run it again, I see that it's gone and there's only the default Kubernetes service running. Well, that's it for this demo. Thank you for your time, and I will see you in the next demo.